Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White and this is Jason's Weird Reads. Today, well, the last video you probably saw was my 10 horror books that I felt would be really great to see adapted onto the big screen as a movie. This one is similar but different. These are horror books. I have 5 of them. Horror books I think would make great television shows. Now, I was thinking not just like regular primetime, although I think there's one in here I think would make a good primetime series. Yes, there's definitely one that would make a great primetime series, like regular television shows. But most of them, I'm thinking of like HBO shows. I'm thinking of like How Sharp Objects, that book by Gillian Flynn, was made into an HBO mini-series of like 5 or 6 episodes. This is sort of what I'm leaning on when I'm thinking of these books and their adaptation. So I'm going to start off with The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Now, I think this would make a great series, a mini-series on HBO or a channel, a studio that makes TV shows like HBO. I think it would adapt really well because it could easily be separated into segments, because it's about a wife who begins to suspect that their new neighbor is a vampire, and although you've heard that story before, there's a community involved. It's not just the wife, and she has to convince her community that this is happening, and not only her community but her husband and the husbands and her friends' husbands. So it's a book club, and they call themselves the Southern Book Club, and they like to read a lot of true crime, and they're kind of obsessed with true crime. And so it's basically a group of the wives within this community in suburbia America, and the main character has to convince them that there's the charming new guy down the street is a vampire, and he's doing terrible things to some of them. It's not easy. It's not an easy task whatsoever. The next up is the more primetime. I think would make a great primetime show. If not, it could definitely be like an HBO show as well. And that's The Hungry Earth, or the Dr. Laura Powell series by Nicholas Kaufman. And the reason why I think this would make a great series is because you have that medical examiner of a small town, or smallish town anyway, who investigates the strange things that are going on within her town. I think each book could become a season, and the first being The Hungry Earth. It would be interesting to take the whole mushroom idea and turn the whole town into like these zombies that are being controlled by these mushrooms, as fungi is known to do to ants in the insect world. But what happens if that happens to people? And the second book is more about a cult, a religious cult, and snakes, and people dying because they're petrifying into stone. So both those would make fantastic seasons that would be fun to watch. The problem with prime time is that you tend to have like 22 episodes, so you'd have to have a lot of filler in each season. And that's why I think this might work actually better in HBO type format. Next up, I have a series that I haven't read in a few years now, but I absolutely love this. We're going with more of a cosmic horror angle again, and that's The Spectra Files by Douglas Wynne. Now, the first one is Red Equinox, and basically what the Spectra Files is, it's kind of like an organization of people who investigate and fight against the supernatural things in the world, but the supernatural things of the world are much more cosmic horror and Lovecraftian related, and that right there, that needs to be turned into a television show. I would love to see it, and it needs to be done like now. And speaking of horrific type things, I like the idea of this next book, or at least book series, becoming a TV show, because it has that real dark, it doesn't take place on Earth, but I think, if I remember correctly, the characters come from Earth, and it's sort of like a hellish realm without being hell, and that's the Nightside series by Simon R. Green, the first book being The Nightside. And I read these books about 10, 15 years ago. I didn't read them all, but I read the majority of them, and I loved them. It would just be fun to watch a TV series that doesn't take place on Earth. It takes place in a sort of hellish-like realm where people are very, very, very offbeat. I believe the main character is like a detective in this place, and he finds things that other people can't. It's a lot of fun. It's very dark, but in a comedic sort of way, and I just think it would translate very well onto TV. And my last one here depends on how far this goes into a series, because the second book's being released this year. I don't know if it's going to stop with the second book, but I hope not. And that is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Again, each book could become its own season. And I just enjoy it. It would be really fun, because one of the most fun things about this book is how the main character, the young girl, she knows all these facts about horror movies, especially slashers, and so they could start each episode as the book does with each chapter, with this neat little scientific fact about horror movies and whatnot. That would be a lot of fun to watch. But the story itself, just the idea of this young girl finding, she watches these slasher movies so much that she knows how to fight against the serial killer that's stalking and killing people within her small town, and she's looking at it as though she's in her own horror movie. And of course, the reality is much darker than that. And I think part of her knows that as well. But it's a lot of fun, and I think you could have a lot of fun making this into a TV show, and obviously watching it as well. So that is my 5 horror books that I think would make absolutely fantastic television. Let me know deep in the darkness down there what horror book you think would make a great television series. Thank you for watching. Keep being safe, keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.